Louise Hay once said, "We are all victims of victims." Dr. Sandra Wilson said something similar when she said, "Hurt people hurt people." She titled a book that way. You know, in the tradition that I come from, the image of Satan is primarily characterized not by evil, although that is there also, but the main characterization of Satan is his misery. He is a miserable being. And in that misery, he wants everyone to be miserable like him. And his misery stems from his fear of being harmed. He feels threatened. And his activities are his activities that harm other people, that induce misery in other people, are his attempt to neutralize the threat that he's experiencing against himself, or as he imagines, or maybe not so imaginary. So that's the image. And the image of the Redeemer, not just in my tradition, but as it's presented in the New Testament, is of a being not who triumphs, but of a being who goes like a lamb to the slaughter. And this being receives the harm that is done to them and bears it, and does not bear it against those who have done that to him, and, you know, Father, forgive them, for they don't even know what they're doing. And he remains. He loves back. He takes what is coming to him like that and loves back. So the value to me of those images is not that they happened a long time ago, or that they happened in a supernatural sense, or that they're about two beings, but it's the value of that for me is the roles that we play. First of all, are we miserable, or are we at peace? That's number one. And when the harm comes toward us, do we behave and respond from our misery? Or do we behave and respond from our peace? And do we try to take everyone down with us? Or do we try to take what's coming at us and turn it into good for them and for us? There's a beautiful story of Muhammad that I love, peace be upon him, that of a woman who, well, whenever he would walk past a certain street, must have been on his way home or something, there was a woman who was an older woman, but she would always throw garbage upon him, and she would throw garbage upon him, and she would shout, really mean things to him. And this went on for days and days and weeks, and he mostly ignored her. However, there came a day when she wasn't there, and he became concerned, and he stopped, and he was looking around at her neighbor. He started talking to her, what happened to this woman? Is she okay? And it turned out that she had become ill, and he went and visited her. And he never once thought about having fear about her, or he's kept walking down the street, and so I just like that image of what he did with someone who tried to come against him. There's also, well, I'll say that at the end probably, but the invitation that I would like to make everyone in this world as you come toward peace. There's a saying that, peace, there's not a way to peace, peace is the way. But to make a little more detail and give that shape, like what are you going to be doing that creates peace? There's an overarching outlook or objective to life that I call ahimsa, or harmlessness. And I didn't make that up. Ahimsa is a very old tradition, and it comes from some African traditions. And in fact, I will probably have to study it even more. Maybe I'll put some more stuff in the description, because I'm sure that I am speaking about it in a way that is different than it may have been in the past, because I have thought about it on my own. And my object in life is to become harmless. There are only two ways to walk through this life, and one is to walk through the pathway of life, and one is to walk through the pathway of bloodshed. And the pathway of bloodshed also includes anything that may or may not include bloodshed, but it will include oppression and other kinds of violence that don't technically involve blood, but it's the pathway of bloodshed, and it ends in bloodshed. If you go down those paths of oppression and other kinds of harms, you'll get to the point where you will shed blood. And it doesn't matter if you're Christian, Islam, or Muslim, Hindu, atheist. It doesn't matter what of those religions you are, because all of them contain people some of them have made choices to follow the path of life, and some of them have made choices to follow the path of bloodshed. So it's not the religion that makes the difference. It's the person that is in it and makes the choices about how they're going to live, if it's the pathway that holds life sacred, or the pathway that justifies bloodshed for reasons. And so to practice harmlessness, I actually want to there's two parts to it. One part is that you do not harm other people, but the other part of harmlessness is that you do not permit people to harm you. You are your first protection, because harm has to do with body. Sometimes when we think about becoming peaceful, we think of that as a spiritual principle, and I don't really use the word spirit or spiritual, because for me, everything is done in the body, and we're here in real time. This isn't about where we're going to go after life. This isn't some ethereal thing up in the spirit. This is how we live and choose in the body. And our body, the way of life and bloodshed is the way of our body, because we are fascinated with assaulting one another and causing blood to spill out of our bodies. You can call that a spiritual matter if you want, but it's very much about being alive and being in our bodies. And your body deserves to be safe. And other people's bodies deserve to be safe. You cannot have peace without safety. And that safety has to come from within you. Ultimately, we can do it for each other as well, but ultimately you have to understand and affirm your own, that you deserve to be safe. Deserve, not my favorite word, but the point of having a body is to have joy and to be alive and to use our gifts, and not to worry about if we're going to be assaulted or oppressed or have our blood shed. And it doesn't mean that you have to harm someone back or punish them or give retribution to people who harm you, but you just have to learn to prepare and to become strong and limit their harm. And traditions like Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu, for example, use the energy of the erstwhile enemy coming toward you. They use that energy to limit but it's like the harm goes by you, like because you know how to cause it to go by you, and it doesn't actually land. There's also a beautiful story of a young man who was acting out in his town, and he was making a lot of bad choices, but the people in the town were trying to still love him, and he even came to the store and was trying to steal from and vandalize the store. And the older man that was in charge of the store, he was like, you can have, if you need money, I'll give you money. If you need something, I'll give it to you. And the young man was just so angry because of some things that had happened to him. And he said, don't you understand it? I'm trying to rob you. And the old man said, you can't rob me if I'm ready to give it to you. And so there's so many ways to think about what is harm, who is harming us, why, if we can even be harmed. Like maybe when you feel so insecure, any stray comment that someone says, or if you see someone laughing, you think it's about you and you're hurt by everything. But if you know and love yourself, then it comes to the part where things like that are not even anything. They're like raindrops. They're not anything. And it doesn't mean that you need to lay down and be a doormat for people. And that's what I'm saying. Don't be a doormat. Limit the harm that people do to you. And you can do that through discipline of the mind, discipline of the emotions. But it's very important to do that. And then so that you limit the harm. And when you limit the harm that someone can do to you, you're also blessing them, because it means that their act of wanting to harm you was not completed, and it's actually a blessing to them. They're free from that karma or whatever, that they're free from having to carry it in their body that they did that, because they didn't do it because you stopped them. But it includes this idea that you can try to find the thread back into humanity when harm started, when people started hurting each other. You'll never find it. If you want to blame your parents, you've got to blame their parents. And if you want to blame their parents, you've got to blame your great-grandparents. If you want to blame one group of people who are starting a war, you've got to blame the people that started the war with them earlier, or the people that hurt them, that pushed them out, and that's why they're pushing you out. Is it right? No, but there's a reason. And the way that you make it right is not by trying to fix somebody out there, but only by taking a look at your family line, taking a look at your personal line, taking a look at the culture and the paradigm you're being a part of, and the pains that are in it, and not necessarily finding someone else out there to answer for everything that has happened to you. Because even if you find the person, like it's very definite, my father abused me or whatever, likely they're not gonna admit it anyway. I mean, they might, but they're not going to be ready for their awakening or their enlightenment until they're ready. And you can't wait for them to change and you be hurt and suffering all the time while you're waiting for them to change. Let them have the timing of their path. And if you're ready to be free from all those things, then do it. Do it now. Be free. Be free from the past. If there's things in the present that are still threatening you, think about how you can neutralize that, either by changing the way you're looking at things or by actually addressing things in real time and not staying in circumstances that you should be able to get out of. And if you don't know how to get out, start with small seeds. So I'm literally presenting to you today this ahimsa, that if you're listening to this and you actually care about, well, how would we do this, or that idea of harmlessness is that pathway to peace. And I actually have something here I wanted to read, because there's no way to remember it. Well, there's actually a couple of things. Matt Kahn said, how many people have to perish before we're inspired to live? Richard Rohr said, only the forgiven can forgive. Only the healed can heal. Only those who stand daily in need of mercy can offer mercy to others. So we're all the guilty and we're all the innocent. We're the ones on the cross and we're the ones putting the nails into the hands and feet. We're both roles. And if we can see where we're at in those things, and who's going to forgive us? You're going to forgive yourself. Because even if there is a being out there that is forgiving you, the whole universe has forgiven you already. You won't be able to feel that until you can forgive yourself. And then in the Book of Mormon, there's this beautiful story of this people who had been murderers before. And all the people were assembled together, and they took their swords and all the weapons which were used for the shedding of man's blood. And I would say that this is literal, actual weapons, and also the metaphor for any weapons that we use to oppress and harm each other. And all the weapons which were used for the shedding of man's blood, and they did bury them deep in the earth. And this they did, it being in their view a testimony to God and also to men that they never would use weapons again for the shedding of man's blood. And this they did, vouching and covenanting with God that rather than shed the blood of their brethren, they would give up their own lives. And rather than take away from a brother, they would give unto him. And rather than spend their days in idleness, they would labor abundantly with their hands. And thus we see that they buried their weapons of peace, or they buried the weapons of war for peace. That's in the Book of Mormon. And giving up our lives doesn't necessarily mean dying, because it's sometimes easy to die and harder to live, but it means giving up some of our grievances. The Course in Miracles says right at the beginning, give up all of your grievances. If you want to see miracles, if you want to see peace and safety, just give up all of your grievances. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it is easier if you think about it as making that peace for your body. Stop helping your oppressors oppress you. Don't keep containing that for them. If they want to oppress you, don't contain that for them. Don't hold on. Don't store that energy that they want to be doing. And so think about harmlessness, ahimsa. And I invite you to begin living in that way. And to me, that's the only way that we will ever come to any safety and peace and any lasting change. It has to come from us. This law written in the fleshy table of our hearts. We can't be told from the outside. We have to understand from the inside who we need to be. And you don't have to wait for anyone else's permission to live like this. You can do it right now. So, thank you.